Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I'm your host, Tracy Stuckrath, and today I'm in Austin, and I'm here to attend the Food Tank Conference, Food Tank All Things Food, today and tomorrow. So after this episode, that's where I'm headed. But before we go, I'm so excited to introduce you to Allie Smith. She is the development director at Partnerships for Children, but she's also a chef and the creator of the Gather With Cookbook project. Allie merges her love for food and community to support foster families, organizing chef collaborations, private dinners, and events that give back to children and family in need. Hello, Allie.
Hello, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy for you to be here as well. I'm going to turn on my do not disturb so nobody bugs us.
I did the same too.
Yeah. And we chatted a few months ago because I met you through the La Dame's chapter here in Austin.
Yes.
And so I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to you on the podcast. So I'm so excited to have you here for Women's HERStory Month. Because I really do think that you are, as the sign says here, bridging the gap with the food and beverage offerings that you're doing and what you're doing with foster care. So thank you.
Of course, it's an honor to be here.
So tell me what Partnerships for Children is, and then how you are bridging that gap with food and beverage and foster care.
It's an interesting tie-in of a little bit of my background, but Partnerships for Children, we are in Austin, Texas, but we do serve kids all over Central Texas, from Waco all the way to some kids in El Paso and West Texas as well. And we basically essentially bridge the gap for kids entering foster care all the way to reunification or adoption processes and beyond. And our programs are tailor-made for kids. So it's mentoring. We have a resource room for all brand new items in the CPS building in North Austin. And then we also have holiday wishes. We provide Christmas gifts for kids, about 7,000 kids, and it's exact gifts that they ask for. It's a really special program. And then the Heart Gallery as well. And what the Heart Gallery is it's photos of kids that are up for adoption in the Central Texas area, and it allows the public to lay their eyes on them. So any need that we can add and we can support these kids to try to help them, any child really connected to CPS. So it's an amazing organization. And I have a culinary background and formal training about 6 years ago. And then I went into case management, and it's just something that I kind of started doing for fun and teaching kids cooking lessons all throughout Austin, different group homes and residential treatment centers, and then also doing private lessons for kids that are in new placements in foster care. And I just saw a big need. And in our resource room, the Rainbow Room, which I previously mentioned, case managers come in daily and ask for gift cards for HEB. Families that take in kids are not given any sort of food, supplemental food income when they bring in a placement. So that's when my brain started working, and I knew a lot of these incredible chefs in Austin. I was like, this is an incredible gap to bridge. And yeah, it just happened. It's happening in so many different ways that I know we'll talk about, but it's exciting. So yeah, it's a little bit about partnerships and a tiny bit about my background.
So it's kind of, I want to say, mind-boggling that, the foster families, they're taking these kids in and there's no support potentially to and I'm going to get my words out, so that they struggle with food insecurity.
Yeah.
While they're, you think they're being adopted or not adopted, but they're being put in foster care, but there's still food insecurity in that. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. I think the knowledge is just not out there. And so it's not that people are uneducated, but it's just a lot of people don't know. They simply don't know until the facts are spoken to them that about a little over 28,000 kids in September 2024 were reported in foster care or connected to a CPS case in Texas. And we're the second besides California. We have the most children in foster care.
Wow.
And it's getting worse. And it's getting to be a lot more. There's agencies begging for placements. Kids are sleeping in police offices, fire, libraries with their case managers. Their case managers often come in for hotel vouchers for a night because they don't have places to take kids right away. And it's just, it's crazy and it's mind-boggling. And 62% of these kids are on SNAP benefits. And with SNAP benefits, the overload of that, there's about a 100-day wait for you to even, or you're able to utilize these benefits. So with a kid being removed and then they're going into a family might have to wait 100 days to receive this. And then the child might even be in a new home in the next 10 days. So the inconsistency of having that, and schools are a lot of times are when they get their best meal or when they're in schools. And it's crazy, actually. In 2023, Texas denied partnership with the summer EBT program. And basically what that is allowing kids, it's $120 per child for a child to access the same kind of food during the summer. And Texas denied that. So it's a major, major thing. And you would think because these kids belong to the state that they are taken care of, but really it's up to private organizations, individuals, families, residential treatment centers to make sure these kids are getting nutritious meals daily. And a lot do fall through the cracks. And the foster families that want the support, that have multiple kids in their homes, food is expensive. Kids are expensive to feed, and they're not getting any sort of supplemental income. So it's a massive need, and I don't think a lot of people are aware of it at all. So, yeah.
Well, and then with the funding that was just denied for school meals and lunches, the USDA program, that's going to impact you even more.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's almost, I hate to say nightmare, but I think the impact of 2025 and 2026 is going to be huge. And case managers know it, families know it. People are stepping down from placements because they just simply can't afford to feed the mouths in their home. So yeah, absolutely.
So you're losing foster families because of you're losing foster families because they can't afford to feed the kids in that they're choosing to help support.
Yeah.
And so they're
wow. No, absolutely. Yeah.
Which is going to raise the number of kids that are looking for houses.
Exactly. Yeah. And then the kids transitional age youth out of foster care too. That's a whole nother thing. They're now expected to feed themselves, and with what money and with what support can they do that? So that's where a lot of times you see kids unfortunately going into homelessness and kids going into, to try to meet those needs. Because at 18, if they're not given that support, I wouldn't know how to, groceries are expensive for me and groceries are expensive for everyone. Right. So, and healthy and nutritious things. So it's things beyond food, it's shelter, it's all of it. And I've chosen to really focus on the food side of things to help that while kids are searching for stability and families. But yeah, it's just a lot of people aren't really aware of what's going on like right now and how much more of an impact it will have severely.
So there's been lots of stories because of and I posted the story from Politico about how the USDA has canceled the local food purchasing to local farmers, but how does food, because you just kind of touched on it, food has such an impact on young kids' brains, right? And their nutrition, and their growth, et cetera. So how does food plays a huge role in their lives. And when they don't have the support from families, can you touch a little bit on how your cooking classes have helped them in that way?
Yeah. And just like you're saying, without a consistent stay, and a lot of times kids really are going from placement to placement. We call kids in CWAP, child without placement. So they don't have they're not even in a temporary stay. They're really going from sometimes 72-hour stays. And when you think about that, even when I'm traveling or when I'm, going from place to place, not having a consistent meal of how I eat when we're all on the go. And so then picture kids that don't get to choose that. They don't have money or credit cards in their wallets to scan. So it's whatever put in front of them within this time. And I think it's just without a regular meal and without a regular healthy meal. So, and a lot of times these kids are going in and out of homes and they're just kind of left with groceries in the kitchen. And they're incredible foster placements. I don't want to make it sound like every single one is a nightmare, but when they're in and out, a lot of times it is up to them to make sure that they're fed. And I can tell you at second, third, fourth grade, I would have never been able to be capable of that.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so I was lucky enough for 4 years. I actually moved to Austin to work at a residential treatment center called Helping Hand Home. It's in Hyde Park. And it's phenomenal. It's accredited nationwide, and its children are really lucky to end up at Helping Hand Home. And they have an incredible food program, and it's kids from really severe backgrounds and severe trauma has happened to them. And so I was working on a capital campaign to help raise funds for extension of a multi-purpose center and a new school. And then I was like, gosh, I really miss cooking and I miss teaching. So I started with the kids there and they loved it. I mean, and these kids are anywhere between 4 and 12, so they're younger. And they loved it. And you could just see, and some of them really stuck to it. And I would try to not do anything crazy, but it was like basic things like quesadillas or making like a 4-ingredient sauce or a 3-ingredient sauce and showing them how easy it is to do this stuff. Making scrambled eggs, doing easy microwave pizzas and stuff, but all kind of healthier approaches and very reasonably priced things that they could. And we would do a little budget thing. And so it just really lit a spark in my mind. And so that's when I started kind of reaching out to other organizations. And it started with simple things. Sometimes we do competitions with some of the older kids. But a lot of times, and also something I've noticed with the older, there are some really talented kids in that could just blow up the culinary world in Austin or wherever they move. I'm like, we had a fruit, to diverge a little, we had a fruit tray just for them to eat as we were welcoming. We were doing a taco cook-off, and this one young woman took all of the pineapple and melons and were grilling it and then added them in. And I was like, okay, this is, and it's like, I could have eaten that at a restaurant because we were all the judges. And so and I asked her how she learned to cook because she knew what she was doing. She knew how to work an induction oven. And she said that her grandmother, before she passed away, she was living with her and she was a line cook at a restaurant, and she would just watch her cook. And she's like, and I just love it. So I was like, a child like this has so much potential. So it went from nutritional need to feeding themselves to educational classes, then to, okay, this could be a craft and a career. And through that, I brought in other chefs in Austin too, with different specialties, and mine are more basic. My culinary background is nothing to like I'm not, I would never call myself a professional chef by any means, but then the ones that did come in, they have amazing skills, and I see more and more that want to get involved too. So the classes are, I think, my favorite part of my job for sure.
Yeah. I taught summer kids camp a couple of years ago in Atlanta, and I had them for 5 days, and it was so much fun to watch them get so creative with the things. And we would change the theme, like one day with Mexican, one day would be Asian and whatever, and the creativity that they had. And then we did a competition with them, and I think they were 10 to 14 years of age.
Oh, that's such a fun age.
Yeah. And it's so much fun to see them get so involved in it and really want to learn how to cook for themselves as well as their families. And so I love the fact that what you saw that in them in those cooking classes that you're doing, and just jumping to those chefs that you partner with, and then jumping to your book, because you're doing a cookbook called Gather With.
Yes.
And you've got some of these James Beard Award winning and Michelin star award winning chefs that are contributing to your cookbook. Talk a little bit about that and what's the purpose of the book.
So the La Dame's Austin chapter, actually I have a dear friend, Jade Place, who she and her husband own Hillside Pharmacy in Austin. And she's listened to me talk about this idea for years and years. They're very close family friends. I call them my cousins. And she told me she's a member, and she was like, Allie, you have to apply for this. And if anything, it's just a jump start of what you want to do. And so I was chosen as a recipient, and I actually flew home from working at a mentorship program in Italy early to receive the award and the scholarship. And in that room were so many incredibly impressive women in the culinary world here in Austin. And it was, it just started with ideas of, because first I was thinking foster families would contribute recipes. And then I was like, well, how would this book actually make a difference where people would want to buy it? And so it's these chefs that you just mentioned, the James Beard nominees and the Michelin star winners now, contributing a recipe that means a lot to them and has some sort of background. And will be a collection of recipe books for about 35 to 45 chefs and people in the beverage world as well. And so it also highlights a little bit of what they care about outside of food. I think so often we meet chefs and we're like, what's your favorite thing to make? And what's your favorite restaurant? And what restaurant do you own? What's your background? And the most beautiful part of this project to me has getting to know them on a personal level. And it's allowed them a little bit of time to have a conversation, time that they don't necessarily have all the time. And Justin Huffman, previous chef of Justine's, was saying, my wife and I did this fundraiser for Kids on the Border, and we would grill burgers for Kids on the Border. And Chef Jam from Thai Fresh was talking about how she cooks, once a year for Urban Roots for kids. And it's not all kid related too. It's all very different. But it's all, Edgar from Nixta has the food fridge right outside, and it's all fresh food that's donated that people in need can pick up. And it makes me tear up because it's the most impactful way of just gathering these stories and then having them each contribute just a really meaningful thing that either started their journey in the culinary world or something that was important in their family growing up or to their family now. And I've finished the recipes, we finished the shoots, and now it's in the editing process. But I think it will be a really beautiful piece. And then all of that, 100% of the proceeds will go towards food security for kids connected to CPS in different way, whether it's HEB gift cards, funding for new programs starting up. Awesome. Yeah. I rambled a little bit. I apologize.
No. That's all great information. No.
Yeah. So it's exciting.
And I like the fact that you said you're hearing these other stories, because even though they're a restaurant chef, food means something different to them potentially, right? I mean, food means different things to every single person, whether it's food security, insecurity, a job, food allergy or whatever. But the fact that these chefs and how many do you have?
Right now, I mean, it's about 45-ish. So it's going to be, we extended to Marfa because it was just a fun Austin tie. And so we have 4 chefs out there. And then 40 in Austin. So it's kind of been, it's crazy. And it's anywhere from food truck owners to pop-ups to Michelin, like Evan Leroy, who just received a star, and Tracy from Birdie's, Edgar from Nixta, who received the upcoming Chef of the Year and Michelin recognition and the award. And so it's incredible. And so it's just all these varying different levels of just what people that just food has shaped their careers, and they've impacted this city in so many different ways. So it's fun. It's a fun project for sure.
And are the recipes for kids in foster care, or is it for anyone that's going to be able to cook?
It's for anyone that's going to be able to cook. I will say some of them are a little out there, but they'd be fun. And I make sure, so it's chefs' recipes in their own world, but in their own words. But we try to make it more simplified for people at home. The basic, not basic cookbooks, but like people that would understand that have no background in culinary, culinary world. So but actually we are doing a few kids recipes too. So it's for both Both things. Yeah.
And when I want to get back to the I love the cookbook is awesome and I really love how that's pulling together, but I really want to get back to like really talking about that the lack of food for the kids that are in foster care and
Yeah.
the when I don't know what my next word like how are you connecting also with farmers, I guess, and showing these kids, you know, in that hospitality and we'll get to what we were talking about before the show too, is creating a hospitality program for these kids.
Yes. Yeah. So the hospitality program, and we're kind of, it's all in the works, but it's um there is a massive, and I mentioned it a little earlier about kids transitional age youth. So
Hmm.
that's anywhere
Hmm.
between kids that are 16 to 22 and young adults, not kids. And basically it's, if they're not going the, I say traditional college route, because I don't believe that is for every young adult
Hmm.
by any means. And a lot of times that doesn't happen. And a lot of times, most of the time, I would say almost 99% of the time, these kids, what they're missing is community, and community to push forward and to further their careers and their life. And so partnering started new conversations with hotel groups and restaurants of a training programs, kids that can learn skills in farming and in the service world, or if they did want to learn some basic cook skills to then maybe become a CDC one day at a restaurant or own their own restaurant one day, and business skills and hospitality business, and then allowing businesses in Austin to hire them. And so it's all kind of ideas now of what, but it's really important. And everyone has showed a massive interest of getting involved in allowing these kids to have communities, careers, and learn, and then something that they're passionate about. So in Austin, sorry to rant, Austin has the most incredible hospitality family. And a lot of times there's a lot of competitiveness in other cities that I've noticed. And everyone who knows each other here just speaks so highly, and they're all friends. And it's just a really, really, I think, perfect city to have something like this. And it's a really philanthropic city in general. So
Right.
yeah, I think it's an important program, and these kids are unfortunately facing homelessness, and there's a lot of food insecurity with kids from that age, and career insecurity. So it's my tie of both things again. Yeah.
So have you seen any like something that has really inspired you, like a story from one of the foster kids going through this and going through a cooking class or meeting a chef, anything like that?
I have actually. Since this program is all like would be brand new or something that we're working on with Partnerships for Children, and our executive director and I have had many different conversations. This one is a little different, and I didn't think I was going to share anything about this child, but he's adopted now.
Yay.
And yes, and his name is Michael, and he's if anyone knows me personally, they know Michael means just the world to me. And he was at Helping Hand Home when I lived there, and I started doing cooking classes. No, oh my gosh, when he lived there, I worked there. And I felt like I lived there. And he was, at 12 years old, phenomenal in the kitchen and things that he did. And so when I left Helping Hand Home to then take the development director position at Partnerships, we still partner with Helping Hand Home kids through all of our programs. And I reached out to his therapist, and I was like, I really would like to still spend more time with Michael. And we started doing cooking classes one-on-one. And just watching him just create things. And I took him up to a appliance kitchen. It's called K&N Kitchen. It's off Burnett, sorry. And he just was outstanding. And he is outstanding. And then we got him into some different music programs, and he performed at Antone's. And when he did meet his mom, and they moved outside of Tyler, Texas now, but he said to me, and it was one of our last like one-on-one dinners, and he was like, you know, I think I really became confident when I was learning to cook, and I didn't know I could create. And he's an incredible musician, he's an incredible artist, and he's an incredible like young chef, and he has all of these vast skills. And so I think a lot of times when kids are lacking this confidence, it makes a massive impact. We have growing up in homes with parents, we're kind of given, do you want to do this? Do you want to do this? The opportunities. And so we have a confidence we don't really notice in us. But without that, these kids lack so much. And if you just instill something that they're passionate about, this confidence grows. And a lot of times those are kids that will then be confident when they're meeting potential adoptive families, or confident if they don't and they're aging out and they're confident in a craft. And so whatever that is. But Michael's story was special, really, really, really special, because when he said that, I just started sobbing. I was like, something so small. And he's 15 now, so I don't know where he's gonna end up. I'd love to see him end up like a restaurateur. But knowing that that's where it stemmed from was a really cool story for me here.
That's awesome. And I hope you're gonna stay in touch with him, right?
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
I talk to he and his mother often, and we have a trip planned. We're going to meet halfway, maybe in Arlington, Texas, and watch, with baseball season coming up, watch a game or something like that. Yeah. And he's thriving. I mean, and the likelihood, and I hate to say this, but it's true, of a child or a male after the age of 7 getting adopted is almost 3%. Wow. So his story was really rare, and it should be so much more common. He's actually been adopted twice, and families have relinquished rights. And I hate to say this, but that's incredibly common.
Wow.
So yeah, and he's so happy. He's just such a special kid. It makes me like, there's thousands, hundreds of thousands of kids just like Michael that deserve to just know what they're interested in and know what they're passionate about.
Right. 100%. And so hopefully this is a permanent home, and
I believe it is. I do.
Good. That's good. So what's missing from the conversation, from the foster care system and food security, that more people need to know about, whether it's the foster families or just the community at large that can help support your book, Gather With, when it comes out, or just especially with what's going on right now and, the canceling of some of the food programs. What do we need to do to help support these kids in foster care?
Yeah. I think the knowledge of, and I love this, and this is so important, but like during Christmas time, everyone wants to do toy drives. And a lot of times you see that all throughout the year. If we want to do a toy drive, and kids love toys, and that's so important. Kids need food, and families to take in kids need that supplemental income to purchase food and to purchase good food. And I think so basically what Partnerships for Children does, and I'm biased, but I think it's genius, is we partner with case managers. So on these case managers' docket, there could be 15 cases, which means 15 children. So we partner with the case managers to meet the needs instead of going to their families or directly to them, which would be impossible to do. And so the case managers will say, hey, this family needs cookware. And so I contacted Maiden, and they gave us brand new cookware to give to this family. The cooking classes, again, Maiden and Austin donated basic cooking appliances so we could teach those kids. And it's little things, it's all very different. But the biggest need we always hear when case managers come in and out of the Rainbow Room is, do you have HEB gift cards? And we used to fund that, but right now we're having to fund different sort of programs. And so now it's all donation based. And I would say people donating HEB gift cards are whether they're $20, $50, $100, it makes a huge difference, because then the case managers can go straight to HEB and buy a meal for that kid, and then also hand off a Dream World, a couple $1,000s to a family that's taking that kid on. And that's what I would like to see. And I think it should be government funded. And I think that should be what the state at least provides for for the kids that are in their care. And I think it's such a shame that it's not. So if individuals are interested, I think it's an easy thing to do. And there's so many incredible nonprofits outside of partnerships for children in any city that you can just say, can I buy a handful of gift cards and whatever this goes to, could you make sure it gets to the right families? And I can tell you they'd be elated.
Yeah. So that's just, my friend works for HEB, so I'm going to reach out and say, okay, he owes me. So I'll say, he does owe me. I'll tell you that later. So yeah, I'll make sure that he gets me some HEB gift cards to give to you. So, I talk about food inclusion a lot, and sustainability and accessibility. And this really ties into that so much because of that food inclusion. I'm like, you've mentioned how the kids want to, they need that community. They want that community, and they want to feel included, right?
They do.
And so how do you, in your world, I don't know what's going on with my mic. In your world, how do you define food inclusion? And how do you help these families provide that through food?
Right now, also another side thing is food banks have reported in 2024 that they are under-resourced, and they're in Texas. And it was like 62% of their clientele was actually families connected to CPS as well. So what we do is we do partner.
CPS, just because we've said it a couple times,
Child Protective Services. So sorry, yeah.
Okay, no, that's okay.
So what that is any child that's connected to a case. There are active cases, and that is 28,000 right now, or over 28 in Texas. It's crazy. And about 8,000 of those kids are in Central Texas. So we make sure that they have access to the food banks. A lot of Texas communities have free meal programs, schools and churches, but it's really hard to individualize that and say, okay, this church is down your neighborhood, go here on Wednesday. I wish I could say we had the perfect model, and we just don't. And what I love about the organization I work for is we really do individualize each case. And the case managers that we do know that there is some food insecurity significantly in a home, we will make sure that that's met. And when I was a case manager, I would go in, and one of the first things I would do if I was called to a home is open up a fridge to see what was in. That was almost the 1,000% first thing I would do. And I can tell you was 80% of the time there was not much there. And I would take my little company credit card and buy groceries. There's not thousands of people like that can have the time to do that. So right now, as we're even speaking, refrigerators look like that all over the state, all over the country. So a lot of times, we will say to the case manager, let us know. And we will make sure that there's income that goes there. And that's what we do for partnerships. But there's child and adult care food programs, and they provide meal for kids in foster care, but the participation is so limited that it's there's this long wait list.
Limited meaning you don't have a lot of resources to provide to that.
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. It's limited, not because people don't want to be involved, but because the involvement is really hard to access.
Why is that? And what's required to access it?
It's hard to access because there's just a waiting list, and there's a waiting list because more and more kids in the CPS realm, the Child Protective Services realm, are entering in these services. So it's this need that's just with a lot of laws that passed in Texas a couple years ago, foster care is tripling, especially with infants. There's a lot of infant placements that are needed. Formula, because when you think, when you're preparing to have a baby, you have the formula, it's everything's set. If you're a foster placement, you get a baby and you're like, oh my gosh, I need formula. And a lot of people don't think about that and how expensive formula is. So partnerships is kind of funny. We partner with the post office. And what I don't know, because I'm not a mother, is when you have a child in a hospital, they'll send you formula in the mail. All of the addresses that are not accurately entered, they get back sent to the post office. Each month we get bulk orders of formula that then we deliver to families that with infants or facilities. And that's a huge thing partnerships does for infants. And we have a massive need for that right now. So
Wow.
yeah,
Oh my gosh.
yes. Yeah. So it's all these things and like little things that, not little things, but I forgot about the formula even while I was talking. I was like, that's a huge thing to make people aware of.
Well, and people are probably wondering why we're talking about this, because this podcast is called Eating at a Meeting. But I think it's important to understand the importance of food, no matter where you are. And the meeting can be the meeting of a foster kid and their parents. You as a caseworker going to a house and looking in the refrigerator, right? And seeing that there's not food. And a meeting is just the word that rhymes with eating better than an event, or, any other.
I love it. It's catchy.
Thing, but to me too, it's like meeting professionals here. And okay, so let's talk about that. Well, although the Austin Convention Center is being torn down, in the next couple of weeks or months, but when meetings come into the city, and if I'm doing an event at a local hotel, can we support you in any way? Because corporations always like to do corporate social responsibility things and give back to the local communities. So what is one way the hospitality industry, and I'm using that largely, but specifically referring to event planners who are doing South by Southwest is here. What can we do to help? Yeah, what can we as event planners help do for partnerships for children or help the communities?
That's a really great question, because there are so many. I could probably talk for so long thinking of different ways. And fresh food donations are huge. And a lot of times that food is thrown out. Mm-hmm. And we also love to feed the caseworkers. We love taking care of caseworkers. They're underpaid, they're overworked. And so something we like to do, and it's happened, we had a restaurant reach out and just say they had a big event, and it was food that had not left the kitchen. And what can they do with it? And I would bring it up here. And we just sent one email out, and case managers just came swarming in, and they got to have a warm meal while they're working, sometimes 14-hour days. And so it gives them that fuel to do their job better. And then if it was for something with an event for kids, we have literacy programs that we love to provide, catering. We have so many different things, and we can also I could call Helping Hand Home and just say, we just got this beautiful meal donated. And so I think if you're at an event and there is leftover things and food, I would say a really great thing, Safe in Austin will accept that, Ronald McDonald Home. And it's just looking, whatever city you're in, I say Austin, and with South by Southwest, is what's left over that we cannot throw away. And you can make a quick call, and everything is about a 15-minute drive here. You can drop that off, and it will mean a lot to somebody, and maybe something that could have never, somebody that it would have gone to the trash.
And that you said that was Safe Austin?
Safe Austin, yes. Safe. And I always like to plug Helping Hand Home and Settlement Home. It's a young woman's home. That's a residential treatment center in Austin as well. Yeah.
All right. I'll share
or partnerships if you want to.
Yes, exactly.
Caseworkers, if you want to be the case. But on the other side of things with restaurants, the simplest thing of donating a percentage of food, and Bill's Oysters in Austin does this. Red Ash and Cover 3, they all have items on their menu that's so simple. It's like fried pickle chips for Cover 3. And they're our actually largest donors. A restaurant is Partnerships for Children, largest donors. And one of the co-owners, Katie Young, helped start Partnerships for Children. And that thing, like, people don't really think about. And so having the conversations while I'm doing these shoots for the recipe book, they're like, tell me how we can get involved. And I was like, well, if you want to look at a small appetizer and just donate 10% of however many of the burrata that's sold, that can go towards it. And so we do that specifically for Red Ash, and that goes actually specifically to the Rainbow Room. And so it's very helpful, and it's really easy, and it's beautiful to see that partnership. So it's a great way for restaurants to get involved too.
That's awesome. That's very cool.
Yeah.
And then, because so when event planners come, they can talk and say, you know, what are we doing? What are you doing for the community? How can we help feed people in the community? And I think we're going to really need that going forward. And
Absolutely.
the fact that you had 28,000 kids in Central Texas in foster care, or in Texas in foster care, that's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it is. It is. And I started this little thing where I would deliver groceries twice a week to active foster families. And that's something really small. And I think anyone can also look up a private foster. And another thing Texas did was a lot of families were trained by the state, and they were state placed. Their agency, their foster and adoption agency was essentially the state. They dissolved that program last year. So every one of those families either said, we don't want to do this anymore, or they had to go to a private organization. So places like Helping Hand Home or Adoption, if you just literally Google foster and adoption agencies, you can call them and say, what families really need groceries this week? And you can deliver those there. And it's all now private. So there's so many, but they really need a lot of help. And that's a great thing a lot of people don't think about as well.
That is amazing that we can do that. But it's also very disturbing that we have to do that.
It is. Yeah. It is.
Yeah. And food has a role in healing and in connection. And I know we've talked about this a little bit before, but what would describe that, but then also at the same time, if you could design the ultimate community-driven dining experience to help fuel that healing and connection for the community, for foster families, what would you do?
So this is my dream, and I can't believe you're asking this, because it means, and I just started talking about it to various people out loud, because I know when you talk about things out loud that they can happen. My dream, I never leave partnerships for children, I can do this, is having a kitchen very centralized in Austin. And a lot of private chefs, and I've noticed being a private chef myself, you don't have space to prep. And you have to then pay for space to prep. And that's really expensive. And, you can do it out of your home, but it's not a commercial grade kitchen. And so I envision, and this is just me in particular, there's so many different ways, but envision a kitchen accessible and centralized in Austin, where people can come in and out and use it as a prep space. And then for their time in that kitchen, they make pre-made meals that go into a walk-in, and then case managers can actually utilize that walk-in and deliver fresh. Yeah, and it's an idea that I've had, and I if I say it now, I have to do it, or it has to happen. So I'm saying it on record. But then they're able to take that and their frozen meals that then they can just reheat and they can use. And I think the amount of people that would get involved in that could be evenly distributed around Austin. And then also using that space too as a learning center for kids that are wanting to learn more about the culinary world and learning how to cook, and using that space in that nature as well. And then also just using it as just a space where you can donate food all in all, and people can come pick it up. And so it's a dream. And I think it would be a really, really amazing thing to happen. And we don't have something like that in Austin. And then allowing also chefs to do their job and having a great space to utilize that they don't have to pay hundreds of dollars for while they're trying. Yeah. So it's an idea.
I love that. I love that idea. And I immediately thought of my friend Aubrey Alvarez out of Des Moines, who created a fridge program, had 80 fridges across Des Moines. And my friend Sarah Cooney in North Carolina, who started a fridge program in Pittsboro, North Carolina, in that county. And I love it. And I'm like, okay, I'm tagging them and I'm saying their names, because you can reach out to them. And the fridge program that you also mentioned earlier too, it can come to life
Yeah.
And I'm going to wish it here, right on the Eating and
Thank
Meeting
you,
podcast.
Tracy.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Thank you. I was like, now that I'm saying this on record, I don't say this to many people. I have to.
Yes, exactly. And then even my friend Kristen from a food equipment manufacturing company. I'm going to tag her too, because she can bring you equipment, right?
That's huge,
So,
because equipment's
yeah.
so expensive. So it's that's
Exactly.
really, and thinking about all of it and wanting it to happen, and then you're like, oh my gosh, but then you have to have the equipment, and you have to have all this stuff, and
Right. Yeah.
then you have to have, if there was a training program, chefs to do the training, kind of volunteer wise. So
yeah.
But I think it's going to happen.
No, it's going to happen. We're going to make it happen. We're going to make it happen. Okay.
Yeah.
So, what advice, this is my final question, what advice would you want to give someone who wants to use food as a tool for social impact? And where do they start?
I think start with what they're capable of. So if it's a chef, if it's somebody that wants to donate, if it's anything, what I previously mentioned is open your computer, Google, and if it's an impact for families and kids connected to CPS, the best thing is foster and adoption agencies or RTC, residential treatment centers, and call and say, how can I assist? And I can promise you, they will have something for you right away, whether it's teaching a cooking lesson. We utilize, I went to one of my friends, Dan, he's the owner and chef at All Day, and we had a little boy and he was on the spectrum, and he's doing his Forever Families filming, meaning we go on once a week on the news with a really special child story. And this little boy wanted to make pizza. And so Dan donated the entire space of the restaurant and his time to teach the child to make pizza. And that's just this, yeah, I'll send you the link after this, and it's really special. And he was so honored to do it. And he made, that boy will remember that for the rest of his life. And so he will. And Dan to this child is like a hero, and he's like he loves pizza, and he wanted to be a chef. And so it's the 3-minute long segment that if you Google Forever Families, you can find it, and then put All Day Pizza in. But that's just such a tiny thing. And Dan was from one of those people who was like, how can I help? You know, everybody that asks, I'm like, okay, now you've asked this, I'm going to make sure. So I think if you're just hearing this right now and you're like, I want to make a difference, and say you're not in Austin, just Google and give them a call and say, can I help bring HEB gift cards? Would you like fresh food? Would you like catered food for an event for these families or kids? Or if you are a chef, I want to teach cooking lessons, because I can promise it's so impactful for these kids that don't necessarily ever have the access to something like that or the opportunity. So, yeah.
Right. I just found it on one of the local TV stations, but I'm sure you can send me the other link too.
Probably, if it's a K-View, our sweet Hannah Rucker covers each one of these segments weekly, and each kid gets to live out a dream. And then it's also telling the community about their story in hopes to highlight their adoption journey.
That's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I am so grateful that we have met, and thank you, Stacy, for introducing. Or actually, I saw Stacy's picture in your video, or in a video.
I love Stacy.
I'm like, please introduce me to Allie.
She's incredible. Her hot barbecue recipe will be in the book. Spicy barbecue recipe.
Okay, awesome. Very cool. Okay, so now everybody, you can connect with Allie on Instagram with at Gather with Allie. You can follow the cookbook there and what she's doing in feeding kids in foster care. So Allie, thank you so much for what you're doing and bringing your skill set as a chef and your skill set as a caseworker to raise money and feed kids and feed caregivers. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tracy, for having me. This is such a special time, and I'm super honored to be on this podcast.
Thank you so much. Everyone, stay tuned next week. We've got a couple of episodes coming to you. And until then, stay safe and eat well. Thanks.